What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. And as you can see, I'm reviewing two movies back to back, but this one I was just too excited to not talk about. It's the Multiverse of Madness. No, not that one. It's this one. Except it's called Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. And let me tell you, I was already excited about this movie when I saw it because, obviously, I think the multiverse is a very interesting concept which this movie dives into. And I know that you're probably thinking it's because of Marvel, but actually I was a huge fan of just the idea of a multiverse because I'm a huge sci-fi nerd in the general sense, since I was a kid. So, when I saw this movie coming out, I was like, I gotta watch it. I'm so excited about it. But from the outside, when you watch the trailer, it does kind of seem like, multiverse fighting. You think that they're kind of tapping in on something. You see how big Marvel is, and you're like, oh, it's just another sci-fi, goofy, ridiculous movie, an action adventure. Let me tell you this movie has so much heart and so much of interesting characters and stories that it's not even about the multiverse. This movie is the movie is wrapped in a sci-fi tinfoil, but on the inside there's a meaty, hearty story that I think that everybody should go see. So, with all this being said, let's just hop into the recap. Okay, so let me explain this the best way I can. We start off with Evelyn, who we see is stressed out beyond belief. She's flooded by paperwork trying to correctly file her taxes for the laundromat her and her husband Wayman run, while also trying to throw a birthday party for her elderly father who she must take care of. The tensions are higher when you learn that not only is Wayman unhappy in the marriage, but so is her daughter Joy, whose sexual orientation and career choices has created a rift between her and her mother. But that's not the only rift Evelyn needs to deal with. When Evelyn arrives at the IRS building, her husband Wayman becomes a whole new person. This new Wayman, called Alpha Wayman, explains that he is from an entirely different universe and that he's using her husband as a vessel to communicate. He goes on to explain that there is an evil entity named Jobutupaki traveling across the universe, destroying everything that Evelyn loves. So, this new Alpha Wayman tells Evelyn she must use a technique called verse jumping, using these Bluetooth devices that allows her to tap into different universes of herself and utilize their skills, whether it's fighting, gymnastics, sign twirling, anything, you name it. Now, Evelyn has to find a way to save the entire multiverse, travel far and wide to stop Jobutupaki while balancing her home life before it's too late. Everything, everywhere, all at once. Alright, now that we have recapped this movie, let's get into the greats. Right off the bat, the visuals. Let's just get this one out the way. I usually do a lot of greats about visuals, but this one I really have to talk about because I think that they had a fantastic cinematography. It just looked beautiful when it came to just the set design, the visual effects, the CGI. Everything just looked beautiful because when it comes to this being the multiverse and they are verse jumping into other universes, they make every single set, every single universe look different, obviously. But they pretty much turned every universe into a film of its own. It all looks like a completely different film, which was a lot of fun to watch. So, of course, I wanted to talk about that. But second off, I wanted to talk about the writing, and specifically the comedy as well. This movie was so funny, ridiculously funny. Without giving away too much, there are just some parts that I'm just crying laughing. First off, there's a scene where, actually multiple scenes, where there's just a parody of Ratatouille, but it's Raccoon, where there is a chef that is just being piloted by a raccoon on his head. What's funnier than that? I don't know why. That's so funny to me. There is a universe where they have sausage for fingers. I'm not even going to go into detail about hopping on a trophy scene. I think you all know what I'm talking about. Watch the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. Anyway, I think the comedy was so well done where it's almost childishly funny, where there's so many things in there that just seems almost like that came straight out of a YouTube parody video. But at the same time, again, and that's why I still wanted to point out to the writing, because while the comedy was extremely funny to me, they did a perfect job at finding a balance where I'm laughing, but at the same time, they'll write one of the most heartfelt scenes between Evelyn and Joy, where she is rekindling their relationship, that made me tear up. Or when you see Wayman talking about how he feels that he is a warrior, but in a different way. He fights with comedy, he fights with laughing, he fights with being silly, because this world thinks he's weak. The world thinks that he is just a weak dude, but in all actuality, he's the strongest one around. And being choked up already. And I think that's just great writing, because you don't expect that from this movie right when you start watching. You, again, as I said, you expect a sci-fi, comedy, you expect all this, but there's some extremely heartfelt moments in here that I just got to give it up for the writing, that I just thought it was fantastic. And lastly, speaking of writing, I wanted to get into the metaphors and messages. Why is because, and again, if anyone wants to possibly skip this, great, because it may seem like it's a spoiler, but in all honesty, I think that it won't be a spoiler. It's not a huge deal, but really, I just want to talk about the fact that the messages that was given in this movie were honestly just so spot on with how they represented themselves, because you see her jumping into these universes, and each universe is a version of herself that is much more successful than her. You have a singer, you have the gymnast, you have the chef, you have all these people that are doing much better than her. And so when she looks into these universes, she looks at herself, and which even the alpha Wayman, that's what the guy who, that's such a hard thing to describe. Anyway, but the cooler, the different Wayman tells her that she is the worst version of Evelyn, because every single universe is doing better than her. And that, right off the bat, I'm like, I would jump off a bridge if someone told me that. But in reality, you look at these different alternate realities, and you see that they're not actually doing as great as you thought. Some of them are still searching for love. Some of them are still do not feel adequate. And I think that's a beautiful message, because there's a lot of people out there in this world that feel like, hey, like, I'm not the best version of myself. I suck. I this and that. But you're getting hard on yourself. But the grass is always greener in an alternate reality. It's no matter what. So why stress yourself with this? Maybe you are exactly where you need to be at this very moment. And they get into that. And they also get into that when after we learn that Joe Butapaki is actually a version of Joy from the Alpha universe, that she only turned into this enemy because her mother in that universe put so much pressure on her, and to learn how to verse jump, to learn how to jump to different realities. She put so much pressure on her that it cracked her. It turned her into this evil entity that lives in every universe at once. And I think that's such a beautiful metaphor for the fact that when you try to live vicariously through your child, because that's what Evelyn is doing, because she always felt like her father never accepted her. So she put all this pressure on her daughter, and it cracked her. It put her in a world where she had to feel like she had to be everywhere at once, and that's why she created the everything bagel, right? That's when you get into this everything bagel that is actually just in all honesty, a black hole that's gonna suck up everything. I'm not even gonna explain the bagel. I'm sorry, guys. If you haven't seen the movie, just go see it, because there's so much part that I'm trying to explain that it's like, what are you talking about? An everything bagel? A raccoon on your head? Steven, are you on crack again? No. But what I'm saying is, it's a ridiculous movie. You should go see it. But it's fantastic. But she creates this everything bagel that's like a black hole to destroy everything. But again, it's just all a metaphor. It's a metaphor for the fact that she feels like she has now donned this cape of nihilism, but she feels like nothing matters. Who cares? But I feel like this movie is a perfect example of the difference between positive nihilism and negative nihilism, which, nihilism means that nothing matters. Just basic nihilism means nothing matters. But I think there's a positive version where you're like, hey, nothing matters. Why don't I just go get another ice cream cone? Or why don't I jump down this water slide? Or why don't I slap my boss? You know what I'm saying? Don't do that one. Maybe. But, it's a positive like, hey, who cares? We all die in the end. So why am I going to waste my life worrying about this? I don't care. Everything's fine. But negative nihilism is, why should I try? Why should I do it? Why should I do this? Why should I do that? Why should I go make friends? Why should I do this? Nothing matters. We're all going to die. That's the negative nihilism. And I feel like this movie explores both sides, because Joy becomes the negative nihilist through the fact that she's like, I can't make my own mother happy, so who cares? Everyone feels like I need to be something else. whatever. You know what? They bother me for my sexuality because I have a girlfriend. I'm not in the career path my mom wants it. Nothing matters. Who cares? Everything should just burn, you know? Whereas Wayman, the husband, kind of takes on a positive nihilism of him being like, you know what? Nothing matters. I'm going to be silly because that makes me happy. And when I make myself happy, the world is better. Why should I worry about the fact that, hey, maybe I could have been an actor. Maybe I could have been a dancer. No, I enjoy being with my wife in the laundromat, taking care of her father, because you know what? I'm exactly where I need to be, you know? So I think that was the most beautiful part of the movie, is the way that they kind of merge the message into this ridiculous storyline. And that's why at the end of the movie, you kind of sit and go, you know what? This was a metaphor. And this is what I truly believe. There was no universe jumping. I don't think that there was an Alpha Wayman or Everything Bagel or Joe Butapaki. This didn't happen. I think this whole movie is genuinely just the cracking of Evelyn, her having a manic episode because obviously this all happened right when she was going to take everything to the IRS. And I think all the pressure of having to try to keep everything going, just like Joy in the other universe, she cracked under the pressure. And this kind of created all of this ridiculous storyline, but in all actuality, this is just Evelyn spiraling. This is just Evelyn thinking of all these different universes where she could be a better person, and you know what? Like she's comparing herself too much. But in the end of the day, nothing matters. She can, you know, they even say it best in the scene, you know, when Wayman is talking to Evelyn from the universe where when Wayman is talking to Evelyn in the universe where she's a famous actress, this is the universe where she decided that she's not going to marry him, because that was one of the big factors as to why Evelyn's father disapproved of her, because she ended up marrying a guy who he thought was ridiculous. He thought he was just a too silly of a dude, a silly, goofy guy. But when she decided not to marry him and become a famous actress, she was still not unhappy. She wasn't happy. But then she ran into Wayman at a red carpet event, and he said to her, you know what? In another reality, I could see us being happy together, just running a laundromat and doing our taxes. And she debated it. She really was like, wow, maybe you're right. So that's what I'm saying, is that, you know what, guys, and that's the beautiful message that I'm going to tell you guys here, that you may be sitting around going, I could be doing better, I could be doing this and that. Hey, maybe you're doing exactly what you need to be doing. And maybe you are the perfect version of yourself on the outside in another universe, but that person is still going to be longing for something else. This is what life is about. If you find yourself constantly looking for a physical thing to fulfill yourself, to make yourself feel whole, you're looking in the wrong place. Because once you get that, you're going to keep looking for more. Fulfillment is looking within yourself and being happy with who you are as a person and still striving for more. You can still strive for things, but when you keep comparing yourself and making yourself feel like you're not adequate, instead of just saying like, hey, I'm perfect as I am, but hey, I'm willing to learn new things, then you're always not going to be happy. So that's what I got from this movie. And this movie had so many different messages that I just thought were nice. You know, obviously, don't try to live vicariously through your child. Don't get so hard on yourself because you are not the perfect version of yourself. And nothing matters. Simply nothing matters. You know? But in a good way. That's how I take it. That's how I live my life. I live my life by saying nothing matters, but in the best way possible. Because why would I worry about what this person thinks, or why would I worry about maybe like all this ridiculous stuff when I'm gonna die in the end, but in a good way, guys?
Yay! I'm gonna die! Ha! You know what I'm saying?
Like, guys, so that's what I got from the story, and I was very happy leaving the theater with that, you know. So with that, let me get into this brief gripe, and I think the only gripe would be is that this is one that I say maybe because it's hard for me to decide, right? The movie felt very long, and as I sat through it, while it felt long, because the movie's about 2.5 hours, and for me, I felt like I felt every minute of it. So, but at the same time, I can't think about what I would want to edit out of the movie. Like, there's sometimes there's a movie that's so long that I sat there and I'm like, there's a whole scene where, like, cut that out. What was the point of even leaving that in? Because I don't think there's anything wrong with a long movie per se, but as long as you're filling it with something meaningful. And Other movies, I'm just like, why is there a whole scene with this guy scraping his toenails? Like, what was the point in that, you know? But in this movie, it's hard for me to pinpoint exactly what I would cut, but I did feel like, I don't know why, I kind of felt a little bit antsy towards the end. Like, this movie's going on for a little bit longer than I anticipated. But so that's why that's kind of like a half gripe, a gripe that I will not put that on the movie, because if I can't come up with a reason as to why I'm coming up with this gripe per se, it's not a huge deal. But I do remember feeling that way, so I was like, I think it's worth mentioning, but nonetheless, it's not a huge grade. So let's just hop into the grade, where I'm just gonna say this movie is a 93%. I thought that this movie was just a phenomenal time, and like I said that the length was a bit what kind of dropped the grade for me, where I was like, oof, I feel like it's kind of going on for a little bit, but at the same time, what would I change? I don't really know what I would change if I was in their shoes, because every bit of it was really good. So I don't know. Maybe you call me in the comments that I'm crazy for saying it, but this is all my personal opinion, where I just felt that way. But nonetheless, yeah, a 93%. It was still such an A movie, like, boom. I don't know what else to say. I just think that the message was so clear. It was so clear, but not shovel fed to you.
Did you just say shovel fed? Because if you're eating with a shovel, then there's a lot of issues going on that we need to address here. But it's a spoon. You mean spoon fed. Okay. All right, back to the video.
It was so clear, but not shovel fed to you. Like, it's one of those things that you watch it, and it's not like they're saying, hey, maybe the moral of the story is life doesn't matter, and maybe you are the best version of yourself. Like, no, they don't spoon feed it to you, but you watch it and you pretty much pick up on that, where you're like, hey, that's the point, and that's what I love about it, because a lot of people may have an issue with exposition of people telling you everything, and I think that's a fallacy of its own. I think exposition has a place in film, obviously, but at the same time, I do like when there is a good, decent mix of you tell me what's going on, but at the same time, I piece it together, So, right at this point, I'm out of steam. I talked about it enough. I don't want you guys to know the entire movie from what I'm saying. Please go see it. Go support this movie. So far, it's actually getting rated pretty well, which I'm glad. It's a fantastic time, so I highly recommend it. So, with that said, I am recording this on Easter. I hope you guys, I'm sure I'm going to post this in this next coming week. I hope you guys enjoyed your Easter. I hope you guys are enjoying your April so far. And that's it. I don't know what else to say. Okay, bye guys.